All right, welcome to another episode of the Political Playbook. I'm Wyatt. This is my co-host Darren. This week it's been a pretty short news week, so this week in our 2-minute drill, we're just going to be going up and down our list of political pundits, commentators, and things like that. Pretty much anywhere where me and Darren consume our news. We're just going to be giving our thoughts, what we like, what we don't like. So Darren, I'm going to let you kick it off here, buddy. What do you have first? Who's our first guy we're going to examine what we like, what we don't like?
Well, my first guy and probably my favorite mainstream show. I don't think I said that right. Talk show host of all time is Bill Maher. And you actually were the one who introduced me to him. Before you had shown me an episode of his, I actually had a pretty low opinion of him since he was like like this atheist, and he's like super like condescending and all that.
Oh, yeah,
But
for sure.
with all that said, I think in terms of talent, like who's like funny, who makes me laugh, Bill Maher all the way. I think he's definitely the funniest mainstream talk show host out there. But I wanted to kind of comment on him and see what you think, because I've noticed with Bill a few things, but I'll start with this. Bill Maher has always kind of held somewhat unorthodox beliefs in terms of like where the rest of the Democratic Party is. He's always like a little on the edge. He's like for example, back in like the 2015, 2016 era, he was like really against Islam. Like that was like his pet issue, and pretty much every episode of Real Time, he'd somehow find a way to bring up radical Islam into his shows.
And of course, there's that famous, Ben Affleck and Sam Harris discussion, right?
Oh yeah, that's one of the like most viral moments I think he's ever had, and it's because yeah, there's this huge contentious argument with Ben Affleck, and I would argue honestly that Bill Maher and Sam Harris were making good points, but I think Ben Affleck was being a tad emotional and wasn't really willing to listen to their points of view, but I digress. I bring up all that to say Bill Maher kind of has a new thing that he's like constantly harping on and constantly saying whenever I like listen to his podcast or watch his talk show, and he'll say, "I've not changed." But the Democratic Party has changed, and I've stayed where I am ideologically, and I'm the one who feels alienated from the Democratic Party because of what they've done. And I don't know how much you kind of keep up with Bill Maher. I don't know that you watch him quite as much as I do, but what do you think about that? Has Bill Maher changed, or has everyone else changed?
Well, for sure, it seems like the tone has changed. I mean, I'll tell you why. So, like, the way he covers certain issues, the way he, purity tests the Democratic Party in his own way is a little bit different than. So, like, he used to be like a supporter of like Bernie Sanders. And then, like, in 2020, he was a defender of Amy Klobuchar. So, like, you
Yeah.
don't. You don't really go from Bernie to Klobuchar without some form of like change in your political ideology. All right, maybe it's pragmatism, maybe he thought she could win, whatever it is, but something is changing. Just what like cuz when I watched Bill Maher, Donald Trump was president, right? And there was a clear like opposition to Trump. He understood the threat that he faced or that he, forced us to deal with as a party. And I think that he got that part right. And then when Biden was president, it became a whole new thing where it was like, oh, this is why we suck, you know? Um,
Yes, yes.
yeah, and and he's made it pretty clear a couple of times. Like, so he's got that Sunday special with Ben Shapiro, right? And Ben Shapiro is like, well, when could you ever vote for a Republican? And he basically says no because of climate change and democracy.
Republicans are a party who, in my view, does not take seriously the emergency of climate change. And I'm not sure if they even believe in American democracy anymore. Certainly, most Republicans, I think, did not in Congress condemn what happened on January 6th, trying to not count the votes in an honest election. As long as those two issues are what they are for Republicans, I don't think they're even savable. Whereas the Democrats, maybe I'm being a cockeyed optimist, but I still think they are savable.
But yeah, I mean, like he's obviously changed. Like he's obviously not the same person and nobody is. It's not just him. Everyone changes over the course of doing political commentary for what has he been doing it for now? 40 years? Like,
Oh yeah, probably. I mean, he started in the 90s, I think, with politically incorrect. Like that was his show where they'd bring on like comedians and like serious people, sit them all in a circle, and then they'd talk current events. So
right.
yeah, it's been a long, long time.
Yeah. So I mean, like, do you think he's changed at all, or do you think there's no way? Like it's the Democrats that have just moved so far left away from him that it's not even doesn't even resemble the Democratic Party.
Well, I'm of two minds, and it kind of comes down, and this is kind of like something I've been thinking about for a minute because I've been a pretty committed Bill Maher watcher, and I've just kind of noticed some trends. So I'll lay out the whole case. Like, on one hand, I do think he kind of changed, and I'm kind of like, more. I see how what your argument is, and I kind of agree. Like he went from being a Bernie Sanders supporter, albeit a Bernie Sanders supporter that was totally happy to hop on the Hillary Clinton train, as
Right.
long as it was a Democrat, he was going to vote for it. And he's always been, against voting Republican. So he has not switched parties. So his shift hasn't been radical. It hasn't been as radical as some his detractors may like to make it seem. But I will say that in the 2016, 2017 era of his show, mainly like 2016 to 2018, I would say, there was a period of time where Bill would make these arguments and he would like say certain things. I remember him making a remark like, I don't know if you really can be a good person and support Trump. And I believe that was in the 2016, 2018 era. I remember him saying something like that along those lines on real time. Whereas now, I mean, he's visited with Trump in the White House, just a few weeks ago. So obviously, he's come around, and he's, like you said, the tone has changed. Certainly, he's far less hard on Republicans. He's far more understanding. But then I was kind of thinking, okay, so there's a slight change. Then I was kind of thinking, well, maybe there's not. Like, because what really are Bill's core beliefs? Ostensibly, you would think Bill's core beliefs are, democracy, climate change, social justice. I suppose that's kind of like what uh, you know, liberal international liberalism. That's
Right.
kind of the vibe you would get during the first Trump presidency. That's kind of what I assumed his belief set was. Like how I mentioned earlier, like one of his pet issues was always like Islamic radicalism. And and on one hand you can kind of say, okay, well it makes sense that he harps on it so much because he's like one of these new atheists, so he's kind of riding the atheism wave of like 2013 to 2015. It was probably a larger amount of time than that, but
Right. The Four
you
Horsemen
know,
era. Right.
and so you could say, okay, so maybe that's why he's so concerned about it. Maybe he just sees. all fundamentalism as something that he should be super outspoken about. But then I realized after October 7th, 2023, that where Bill would previously have on genuine leftists or, people I would kind of put in that category, such as Cornel West, like the black preacher man
Yep.
guy,
Yep.
uh, and who is an outspoken defender of Palestine. I suppose he's pro-Palestine. Bill has totally, since October 2023, he has totally shut out any panelist that would be critical of Israel. I have not seen more than two, and on the two occasions that there were people that were critical of Israel on the show, it was people who aren't, that's not like their issue or something they're even read up on. That's just something they brought up incidentally, and then Bill quickly, admonished them and, you know, did like, do you think Israel has a right to exist? Stuff like that, right? So
Right.
he was very hard on them, but I can only think of two characters he's brought on since then in over a year. So I'm thinking like David Hogg, because he's made two appearances since then, I think. And the first time he appeared, yeah, he said he made like a paltry defense of Palestine, and incidentally, and then Bill quickly kind of, you know, admonished and
Said
scooted it
pivot,
out of the
pivot,
way.
pivot, pivot. He said pivot.
Yeah, yeah, basically. And then I believe another one, I could be wrong, but I believe it was a rapper named Killer Mike. Uh, no, it was rather Killer Mike, or it was another, or it may have been Michael Eric Dyson. I don't know. I get them mixed up
Don't get me
sometimes.
lying to you, boss.
I realized then that basically maybe Bill Maher hasn't changed. Maybe just our assumption of who he is and what his core belief that he really cares about, maybe that was flawed. Maybe his core central belief was he wants to defend Israel. Like maybe he wants to do Hezbollah on the part, for Israel. But then I was thinking, okay, and this is where I want to ask you, because he's definitely a defender of Israel. Like that's not in contention. But do you think he's deliberately being subversive and is only just trying to move the conversation to pro-Israel, or to not have anyone criticize it? Do you think that's like a conscious thing he's doing, or do you think it's more instinctual? Because Bill is like half Jewish himself, so I assume he has, and I know he has because he displays it. I assume he has quite the affinity for Jewish people. So, do you think it's like conscious, like Hezbollah, like subversion, or is it just something he's doing out of instinct? Like he's just against anyone who's anti-Israel, so he doesn't like to even give them any quarter. That he doesn't even like to have them on his show.
Well, so I think, well, it's weird because, like, even for, like, whenever he had that, era where it seemed like his pet issues seemed to be, like, fundamentalist Islam, right? He would
Mm-hmm.
kind of have on people who would be willing to defend, like, and Ben Affleck wasn't there to defend fundamentalist Islam, but he spoke up and he allowed the engagement.
Yeah, yeah.
But from what you're making it sound like is that there's way less of that like tolerance for like criticism of Israel. Is that what you're saying?
Oh yeah, especially in the post October 2023 era.
Well, it's got to be. I mean, so like he's always been pro-Israel, and not he's not one of those people that is like pro-Israel because he would rather have Israel as an ally versus like other fundamentalist countries, right? I think he's genuinely like Israel is like a good for the for the United States in terms of like being an ally and not just like an ally but a close one. So I would say it's instinctual.
I agree.
I don't think he's going out of his way to censor or not bring on people that are gonna, make the entire thing about Israel and Palestine. I don't think he's going at it. He doesn't strike me as that type. Now, I can't. I'll be honest with you. I can't really speak to like how the format of the show, like the panel, is like constructed. But my guess is that like Bill Maher just has like a no list, and it's the producers that are trying to get guests. Like I'm sure Bill Maher has less of a say than we probably think about the number of guests.
That's very true. That's very true. And it also could be one of those things where it's not him necessarily. I don't know how show business works to a T, but it also could be that just maybe because he's such a staunch advocate for Israel, maybe the pro-Palestine types don't want to come on his show and argue their case. I don't know. I mean, I can think of a few figures that would probably like to argue their case, but maybe he's not. But, I have no way of knowing that if they, I don't know, had applied to get on the show or whatever.
I
I
mean, I'll tell
can't.
you what, I don't think that that's ever happened because if some well-known leftist or conservative, for that matter, if some well-known leftist or conservative was going to go on Bill Maher and then Bill Maher told them no because of their positions on Israel and Palestine, then we would know it. Because they
Oh,
would
yeah.
100% leak that stuff. But also, Bill doesn't strike me as the dude that would reject somebody from being on the panel or from being on Club Random just because of their position on that. I mean, he has those discussions. He just has them in like you said. He's like, all right, let's move on as quick as possible. Get your like one sentence in, and then I'm not even going to concede. I'm just going to move on to to the next subject.
Yeah, I have noticed that and on real time, it comes more naturally when he likes to, break up the conversation in such a way because he'll have like other panelists who will, detract from a point, and then he has a segment in the middle of the show as well as the end. So, depending, especially that middle segment where he does some jokes, you know, he tries to like get it in the middle, but if he's ever caught in between a rock and a hard place, I've noticed he'll like start up the like the mid-show comedy segment. So he
Yeah.
is,
Let's go to break, like
yeah, yeah, he's pretty tactical like that.
no, he's
So,
a pro. That for sure. He's a pro.
oh yeah, I mean, I will never doubt his talent. I mean, he's quippy, super witty, super funny. My all-time favorite for a reason. I guess I mean, my last thing on Bill Maher, it's like, going back to that question, has he changed or has he not changed? I think my theory is that he hasn't changed because substantially, or as substantially as anyone might say, just because I think his core issue is ultimately Israel, and all the other stuff is basically just incidental. It's like how he can get people on Israel's side, or at least not talking about it.
Really, that's so interesting to me because I definitely don't see that. I mean, I don't know if you were to ask me, and now granted, I don't watch Bill Maher as much as you do. I was the one to introduce you to him, what, 4 years ago, 5 years ago now, maybe longer actually.
Oh yeah, it's probably four or five.
My guess is that what this is like I don't think we're seeing him change of substance, to be honest with you. I think that what we're seeing is the nature of the Democratic Party is changing. The nature of politics in America is changing. Like it used to, the issues that are the issues now are not the issues of whenever he was becoming mainstream and becoming popular. I mean, that's just not. People care about different things now, and we're in the world of the internet. So, like, you can be tainted by like the online left, which is what when he's talking about like he's not a part of the Democratic Party or they've moved so far. He's not talking about like mainstream Democratic representatives or even the DNC. He's talking about the online fuckheads who can't
Yeah.
who can't do anything but ruin a perfectly normal and good thing. That's all he's talking about, like
I
But
think so. I think he probably browses Reddit. Like everyone on Reddit always has something negative to say. I don't know if you're a big Reddit browser, but I think he's even mentioned that on a club random that, some offhand remark about those assholes on Reddit.
that's funny. I did not. He did not strike me as the guy that would be browsing Reddit. That's super funny, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, listen, I don't think that there's like anything substantive that he's changed his stance on. Maybe just his focus is different. That's sort of my thing. Now, like, I consume a little bit of like Kyle Kulinski, and if you look up Kyle Kulinski, he's got at this point probably hundreds of videos about him just going in on Bill Maher and now he's not a leftist and he's caving to the right and he's a centrist and it's like okay like I think you're a little far gone. Like I think you're drinking a little too much of the Kool-Aid there, bud.
Oh yeah, he was never like a radical leftist, but and
Well, he got
go
that
ahead.
reputation just because he was a militant atheist. But anyway, what were you saying? What were you saying?
Well, I was just gonna say, go off on your thoughts about Kyle Kulinski now that you've brought him up, because I've watched or I've listened to a fair amount of Kyle, and I listen a lot to his wife, so Crystal. So I'd be interested. I have some thoughts on him. I'd like to hear what you think about Kyle in general.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I used to watch Kyle all the time, and I'll say this, he was really good when I was young, because I didn't know any better. I didn't I it was easier for me to get information from listening and watching rather than reading. So like right now, like a lot of my sources are like written sources, more like, air quote legitimate sources. But back in the day, like when I was a, 17 to 20 something year old kid, like absolutely I would I would watch Kyle Kulinski all the time. That's where I got my news from. And now it's almost, and listen, I have no hate for the guy. It's just harder for me to watch him today because the same stuff that like I used to like about him, like the comedy, I'll play a clip really quick of his impression of Bill Maher.
I mean, he's always been try hard with his whole like every week on his show. You get his whole shtick of, I'm Bill Maher. I smoke weed. Okay, I have sex. Okay, I'm a bad boy. Like, you get that sort of shit. Another one of his smug rants about, like, let me tell you everything that's wrong with the Democrats, okay? And it turns out the problem is they're too far left, and young Democrats love Hamas, okay?
It's gross. Like it's almost like, ugh, you're a little too. Come on, be better. You know what I mean? Like it's just weird. It's. Now, in terms of like policy, I have also moved away from him. So that's probably why I engage with his content less. But he does do less, like his accuracy in terms of the stories that he showcases is probably less so. And that's something I just found out with time. So like he doesn't cover truthful stories all the time. And I hate that I can't. You got me on the cuff here. I didn't even write any of my notes about him, but I'm sure I could find something where the guy, like 6 months later, we find out, oh, this wasn't even true.
Well, I believe you. Sometimes it's just kind of hard to think of an example in the moment, but I certainly believe you. And I'll say this: I can't think of any examples off the cuff where he got a news story wrong, but I also don't consume him a ton. But you know what he did get wrong is this 2024 election.
Dude, oh
Or
my goodness. Yes. Dude, that was unbelievable. He showed this map. I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna find it. But basically he shows, yeah, this is the worst case scenario is a Kamala, 300 electoral vote landslide. And I'm like, this guy's insane. Like, you want to talk about separated from reality? Like the dude, you can't have that analysis unless you're living in an echo chamber. There's just no way. And he swore. So there was this poll out of Iowa, this Seltzer poll, and he swore by it. He was like going up and down. He's like, "Oh my God, this makes me feel." And like you said, he couldn't have been more wrong. You know, he just couldn't, and he owns
Oh
it.
yeah.
To his credit, he does own it.
Yeah, I don't know what that was. I guess it was just wishful thinking on his part because uh maybe he got caught up in the hype. I don't really
He
know what
drank the
all.
Kool-Aid, man. He drank the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
I mean, I was saying it for weeks. I was like, yeah, this guy's got no shot. Like I felt very pessimistic about the election, and then sure enough, boom. Now listen, I'm not Nostradamus, like you know what I mean? It's just I engage with a lot of Americans of a lot of different demographics. I feel like a better touch about how people feel, you know? Like
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I think Kyle probably does exist in a bubble, and I think of a bit of a bubble at least, and it's probably a bubble of his own making. Honestly, uh, something I've noticed, talking about how commentators have changed over the years. Kyle has become really, I guess you could call it, he's real big in purity testing, I feel like now.
right.
Because there was a time where he would go on like Joe Rogan and have a discussion, and his wife and his wife's co-host Sagar, they blew up because they went on Joe Rogan, and so you would think that they would, that Kyle would have a lot of gratitude, and and at one point Kyle did seem to have a lot of gratitude and seemed to like Joe Rogan quite a bit, but now I mean, there was a period in time after the election and around the election where he just wouldn't stop shitting on Joe Rogan.
Well, he
Uh,
still won't now. He still won't now. And the other, sorry, I don't want to cut you off here, but
no,
the
no,
other
you're
part that
fine.
really, really ticks me off about this, and like I said, if you were to place like my policies and like his policies on a graph, I'm sure we're close. You know what I mean? But I think it's our attitude and our way that we view politics that is dramatically different. Like you said, he's all about purity testing. And to be honest with you, I'm completely pragmatic. Like I just am. You know, you do what you got to do to win within like legal bounds, obviously. But he's super not. He's super not that way. And even with Joe Rogan was his friend. You know what I mean? Like, and he threw that away. And like you said, brought on his wife to kickstart their show right after they left with The Hill. Right? Did him a
Hmm.
huge favor. Dude did not give a flip, man. And I guess to some extent he can feel that way because he already made it, and that's fine, I suppose. But I just don't get it. I really don't.
There's like a betraying aspect of it all that I just don't think someone of my disposition would ever be comfortable with. I mean, like for example, like you know, I consider myself pro-Palestine, but and that's a really hot button issue. I mean, frankly, we're basically saying that a genocide is taking place and all that. But I have friends and family that are pro-Israel, as many Americans are, and I'm not gonna like cut them off or anything. I think that's a honestly it. I totally understand where they're coming from. I mean, they've imbibed enough propaganda their whole lives, and even if they were well read on the subject and still chose to be Zionists or something, I wouldn't hold it against them. I'd still go out to dinner and have a good time. But
Yeah, 100%. And this militant attitude that he has towards politics, where it's like if you're friends with a pro-Israel like Zionist, you should not be friends with them. Or if you're friends with a Trump supporter or like a MAGA person, then you should rethink your friendship with them. And it's like, okay, this level of like pearl clutching, and I'm sure it does well at the dinner parties that he goes to, but ultimately I don't think it gets us any better. At what when has it ever worked ever? You show me the scenario where it's worked, where it's like, okay, we just need to exclude what 40% of the country. I mean, I think Bill Maher, I know we talked about it a little bit earlier. I think he had the better like realization here where he's like, okay, even if I think these people are fucking crazy, we can't treat
yeah.
them like they're children or we're not going to get anywhere because they're 40% of the country. This is a democracy.
Oh yeah. Oh
Kyle
yeah.
doesn't have that political analysis. I don't think so anymore.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think Kyle has the capacity to like separate like these political things versus like his own like personal like attitude towards people.
Right.
And that's in this point, I mean, it's been said so much it's become trite, but it's almost like how, in fact, it's so trite. I almost cringe to say it, but it's like how leftism has almost become a religion in certain ways. The heretics are to be cast out, and you can't deviate from what is dogma.
And well, and I'll tell you, I'll give you another good example of Kyle, and then we can move on to whoever you want, or you can give your thoughts on this too. The moment that like did it for me, and the moment that like I just like remembered what it was. It was when Biden was president, and they were trying to pass Build Back Better and the Inflation Reduction Act. And what happened was is that we had two Democratic senators because it was a 50-50 Senate, and it was Christian Sinema and Joe Manchin. And I think Kyle watches way too much like House of Cards. And I'll tell you why is because this dude, his idea for getting Manchin on board. So for most people, it's like, okay, do we have to give West Virginia, which is his state, do we have to give them like some sort of like extra federal thing for jobs and whatnot? Like, how are we going to like bribe, but not like technically bribe him? That type of thing. That's most people's analysis. Kyle Kulinski says,
if you don't vote for this bill, your career's done, son. And Joe Manchin, oh, would you look at that? Looks like your family's in some legal trouble. Looks like your daughter is part of the EpiPen scandal where we have her caught dead to rights, saying, let's come up with a rationalization in order to jack up and price gouge on EpiPens. Illegally colluding with Pfizer. We have the emails. Now, maybe Merrick Garland and my DOJ is going to come after you, and maybe your family's going to go to jail. Unless, of course, you vote for this bill. Then we can work something out. You have dirt on all of them. Use it. You have leverage. Use it. If you're not going to do it, I don't want to hear about a fucking legacy.
We should threaten to jail his daughter, who was on an oil executive board, for doing something or another. She had some sort of contract that was being investigated. He's like, we should have the Justice Department threaten to put her in prison. And I'm like, I don't even know what the fuck I'm listening to right now. Like, this is like, if I want you to imagine Kyle Kulinski reacting to a Ben Shapiro video where Ben Shapiro is arguing to put somebody's daughter in prison if they don't vote a certain way. Could you imagine how much they would blow up if they said that? Like, it was unreal. That's just my thing. But
Wow, I was not aware of that. I will be interested though. Have you said all you want to say
yeah,
about
yeah.
Kyle? Okay, then I kind of want to. We mentioned her a moment ago. I want to talk about Kyle's wife, actually, Crystal. Crystal and Sagar. I get. We could talk about really the entire
All of breaking points, man.
Oh yeah, breaking points, cast of characters. Uh, I'll just give some initial thoughts about breaking points. I think overall, I like the program. It's something I listen to multiple times a week on Spotify. And I typically, if there's some topic I'm interested in, they will be covering it. So even especially the more niche topics I'm in, it seems that they have a focus on Israel and Palestine, Middle Eastern affairs, and I'm a big I like to think of myself as a watcher of those events, and they'll also even talk about niche things such as like podcast drama. So I kind of eat that up as well. So I like their program. However, uh, I I don't think and we've kind of touched on this in our own, I guess, private discussions that we haven't recorded. I don't think what they're doing is anything that special, though. They claim to be like independent media and journalism, and to a degree they do some of that, but I would say that's like 5 to 10% of what they do, and most of what they do is just infotainment. So, like what we do, we rehash the news for people. We talk about the current event so that our viewers know what we're talking about, and then we commentate. We opine, and tons of people do this. So, uh, in that sense, I don't know if they've really earned the title independent media. I think what they really are is a slightly elevated podcast. So, I guess my main contention with them is that they think very highly of themselves, but I don't think they've quite earned it. But what do you say?
Yeah, I mean, I'm mostly there for the clips and the bro show, to be honest with you. Uh, I'm a huge fan of Ryan Grimm, especially. Although he can be a little dry and tough to listen to sometimes. Not in like just the way he talks; it's just like really dry. Sagar, I always find like shockingly insightful. I'm always like, okay, this dude's brain's ticking. So like, I know the dude's smart, even though we disagree on most things. I'm like, okay, this guy, I can have a genuine conversation with this guy if we met at a bar and we wanted to start talking politics, you know?
Oh
Uh,
yeah,
Crystal and Emily, they're right. It's Emily, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I feel bad for Emily because she's gets paired with Ryan a lot, and she's just a step behind. It's it's sort of like if we
Yeah.
it's sort of like if we had, Jake Tapper on with like, you or I. It's like, okay, this guy's just going to be a step behind just the nature of what they are right now. Like it's
Oh yeah.
um
Oh yeah. And I don't mean to like punch down at people, but she's just not. You can tell she's not as well read on. She's just not as well read or as educated as especially Sagar and Ryan, and she's just not quite as talented. She is talented. There are times where she's said things. I'm like, oh, okay, so she is read up on things. She'll mention,
well,
you know,
I don't even doubt that she's read up. I just, I'm sure all the information's there. I think it's just a communications issue. That's all I think it is.
oh, okay. So you would argue that she's not as good of a communicator. I would agree as well. She kind of has this. Well, I don't know if it's a communications problem as much as it is a balls problem. She doesn't really have the ability to fight back against, even Ryan, who's like, a very calm person.
Hmm.
Sagar and Crystal will be incredibly combative at times, but I don't think Emily has it in her to actually like push back that hard against Ryan.
Yeah, yeah, I generally would agree with that.
Yeah, yeah, but like you were saying with Sagar, though, I think Sagar is impressive. He definitely has a wide range of knowledge. I am a fan of his, even though he's kind of dorky. And then also like he's like this really big like JD Vance shill, which I don't.
Sagar is?
Yeah, yeah, he loves JD Vance. I don't. I mean,
Oh,
I don't
that's kind
really
of
know
sick.
why. Something I do admire about Sagar, he's willing to basically admit that Trump is, he's not going to just sit there and just totally, toe the party line when it comes to Trump. He knows that Trump is incompetent,
Well, and I
basically.
love his willingness to like sometimes even defend the indefensible. Like sometimes he'll just be like, "Yeah, but at the end of the day, he's Secretary of State. These people are here illegally. Let's just I don't really care if they have a trial.
Yeah.
Like he's just like, yeah, I don't really, yeah, that sucks. Oh God, that sucks, man. But like, I don't really give a fuck. Like that's
Yeah.
because I respect it. I really do. Because like, a bunch of people would just try and paint it, in rose-colored glasses as best they can, but he's like, yeah, sorry, no, you're right, but also I don't care. Like it's
He definitely goes further than most. I will say he won't go like all the way in my mind, because I won't relay the characters I'm thinking of since we're on YouTube, but he certainly won't go all the way, but he'll go as far as you can go while being mainstream on certain topics. So I do commend him for that. Uh, and then Ryan, I'm a big fan of Dropside News. It's a very uh, I think Ryan's very talented. But are there other commentators you wanted to hit on?
Yeah, sure. Let's talk about. Well, this one will be one that we'll both agree on and kind of hate on a little bit. So sorry, but let's just shoot it a little bit about Ben Shapiro. What are your thoughts on Ben Shapiro or the whole Daily Wire crew as a concept? Like, what do you think about any of them?
I have a pretty low opinion of the Daily Wire and pretty much all of its staff. Or personalities, I should say. The whole like pro-Israel thing. It's almost more respectable when it's like Ben Shapiro doing it because it's obvious why he is pro-Israel, but like with Matt Walsh, this is somebody who I've followed for some time, and you can tell just by his Twitter and then clips I've seen, he's certainly hip. He knows that being pro-Israel is not in the interest of America, and yet he's willing to toe the line just because that's where his butter is. That's where his bread is buttered. So in that sense, I have a lower opinion of his, and then as even like disregarding all the Israel stuff, like uh, I'm not really a fan of Michael Knowles or I am so blanking on the old guy's name,
Andrew Clavin. Andrew
Andrew
Clavin.
Clavin. Yeah, Andrew
He's
Clavin.
irrelevant anyway. Don't worry about it.
Oh yeah, he doesn't seem to have much of a following, but he just seems kind of like a nasty person from what I've seen about him. So I'm not really a super big fan of any of them. But what novel insight do you have, or what's your take on them?
Well, I wish I had novel insight. Unfortunately, I do not. I am concerned though a little bit. I did read, and it's pure speculation that they were getting bankruptcy lawyers. So there's worry that there's financial trouble within the Daily Wire, which is why they had to drop, Candace Owens, Brett Cooper, and ultimately they couldn't reach terms with Tim Pool and Steven Crowder. But regardless of that, that's just like, I don't know, just for the audience, I guess. But in terms of their commentary, I do sort of have a problem with their framework. Their framework is essentially this, and I'm going to try to steelman this, all right? Their framework is that every single person is politically biased. So, whether you're getting CNN, MSNBC, Fox, they are politically biased. Obviously, left, right, doesn't matter. We are the ones, we are going to be openly and transparently conservative in our spin on things. So you're not going to get necessarily the facts of the case first. You're going to get a conservative spin with selective facts thrown in there. And that to me is a model that is just awful for in terms of like keeping America informed. Now listen, you can make the responsibility, and I know these spineless cowards would, that it's up to the reader to, research all the facts. I totally get that, but at the same time, I do feel like there is some duty to your audience to try and give them as much of facts as possible. Um, at least to the best of your knowledge. I just doubt that they're doing that. But I mean, in terms of them specifically, Ben Shapiro, I don't like because I don't I don't agree with him on pretty much anything. There's not a single thing that he thinks can't be solved by the free market and just individual people trying to better their own lives. It's just ridiculous. There's no macro level solutions for him. Now, Michael Knowles, you should give a listen to every once in a while. He can be insightful. He's definitely like a person who knows his history, especially he's a Catholic, especially of the church, and he knows a lot about American history and like where, America stood on particular issues at particular times. I've seen him correct a lot of lefties on stuff, and I'm like, okay, well, he knows his stuff. Like, if you're gonna go up against him about anything like that, you're gonna need to know your shit, because he's good. Now, Matt Walsh, he's laughable, and like I said, Andrew Klavan is irrelevant. So
Yeah,
I say that as we have 9 subscribers, but you know what I mean.
well, we've been doing it for far less long, and we
That's
don't
true.
have the big backing of a large platform. So there's that. We'll get there. We'll get there. But
Yeah. Hey, and by the way, Ben, if you want, like, if me and Darren, I mean, we'll take the Israel money. Like, if you just want to give us the money, 150 grand a year a piece sounds good. Yeah, and we'll whatever talking points you want once a week, we got you.
I think I may it would be tempting. I don't know if I would have it in me to not to not relay some Hasbara to the to the viewers.
Well,
If 150,000 was on the line, I don't know if I could say no.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
here's the thing. I'm waiting for the money before I decide to. I mean, you've seen the oh, what's his name? Tim Dillon, is that his name? Or the fat comedian, the fat gay one. Anyway,
oh yeah.
he said the same thing. He said, I'm waiting for the money. Like, I'm waiting for the Israel money, and then I'll be as pro-Israel as they come."
That's good. That's good. Yeah, or you could be. What would your price be with Russia? You could be like Tim Pool, and I don't know how much he
That's a
made
good
quite a bit.
segue to Tim Pool. Yeah, he made. Oh, I hate to give you a number, but I think it's in the neighborhood of $4 million. Um, I think that's what he got paid out, and he didn't have to give any of that back. Did you know? I didn't know that. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, and I just want to clarify to the audience, he is technically, from a legal perspective, a victim because he didn't know, right? He just didn't do his due diligence enough to investigate that the person financing his entire media operation didn't fucking exist. I mean, I guess if you want to say that it's it's a wild world where that is the best case scenario. It's like, yeah, I just didn't know I was being funded by the Russian fucking government, you know?
Yeah. I mean, and that's what's so silly. It's because like he obviously knew something was up, but he knew to save his own skin. He just wouldn't like investigate any further. He would just take a good thing and he wouldn't corrupt it by like making sure the money was clean. Because who's going to pay like hundreds of thousands of dollars
A
for a
month.
YouTube video that gets like I don't know, like 30,000 views, you know?
Well, that's the problem with this right wing media circle is the amount of money. So right wing media, I'm sure as you know, it dominates the online world. I mean, so left wing media, it dominates like legitimate news and legacy stuff. But in terms of like YouTube, Rumble, Twitter, Spotify, all of that, it's dominated by the right wing. That is where I mean people like to say, like, if you listen to like political scientists, they'll tell you that like what Obama did in that 2008 and 2012 election with Facebook was unprecedented, and the left owns the online world. That is not true today. The idea, like, the algorithm is it's made for right wingers almost, which is hilarious when these people try to cry and pretend that they're censored, because it's like you're the most like volume of engagement on these platforms. Like, it's not even close.
Oh yeah, and then like to your point, like even just right adjacent people. So I'm thinking like the Joe Rogans, the Theo Vaughns, people who
Right.
are I guess they get this right adjacent kind of title because they're willing to have people of all perspectives on. So I'm assuming that's why they're getting this title. But those are the biggest podcasts on the planet, or at least in the U.S. I don't know about on the planet, but at least I've seen the Spotify numbers, and I believe Theo Vaughn and Rogan are both in the top 10, if not top 5, and then a host of other podcasts just do absolute numbers.
Oh yeah,
Tim Pool especially.
yeah, and Tim Pool's audience is massive, and there's no denying their success. Like I want to give credit where credit's due. These people have crafted an audience of millions of people, millions. Ben Shapiro is probably the most dominant guy, and then Poole, Crowder, Michael Knoll, like Candace Owens. Like these people are massive. They're just massive, and they can't be understated. So credit where it's due, you know?
Oh yeah, it certainly takes talent. Although, I'm not as big of a, maybe you consume more of his content than I. I don't really know exactly what Tim Pool's all about, but from what I've seen about him, he doesn't strike me as someone who's terribly impressive. I mean, I think he, stays up to date about current events, but and maybe maybe this is a bit of a self fellation instead of flagellation, so self fellation. But I would say like my level of knowledge is probably at least on par with Tim Pool's, and this is something that we do once a week, and we prepare for it once a week, and he does like a daily show or multiple times a week, and at
Yeah.
least.
And well, and it happens all the time. And by the way, and I'm not trying to beat him over the head against this, but it happens all the time on his show where like he'll cite something, he'll blow up, he'll get extremely angry, he'll get his talking points out, and then like the leftist guy will be like, no, that's not true. And then they'll look it up, and then sure enough, the left wing guy's right. So like Luke Beasley went on there not that long ago, and he had a debate about January 6th. I can't remember the exact specific. I'll play the clip.
You have.
No,
right?
I
So
haven't.
so,
People
no,
that
no,
you
stop,
talk
stop.
about
You don't know
are-
anything about these January 6 cases. You don't know why these people are in jail. You don't know that a man is in Brooklyn right now for 3 years without charge or trial. And when Donald Trump says these people have been held for too long, you say, no, Trump is wrong. Keep them locked up. That's fucking fascist. Dude, you've been sitting here with no knowledge of the specifics of some of these cases. There is a man in Brooklyn right now. I'm going to say it again. No charges whatsoever brought. And he's been in jail for 3 fucking years. For you to sit there and say it is good that he remains locked up is fascism. That is saying the hierarchical system of the courts and the government is just, and the process is all that matters. And I am saying perhaps 3 years is enough. Because I actually have moral logic and an understanding of these cases.
A few moments later.
Now we got a problem. Let's try this again. Let's try a secondary source. Let's see. There it is. They introduced evidence that Tarrio discussed with associates a plan to have a large crowd in Washington storm government buildings in a scheme they called 1776 Returns, in which the Winter Palace was used as an apparent code for the U.S. Capitol. In a message, he said, make no mistake, we did this, do what must be done, and he directed the Proud Boys to do it again. So the question then becomes, in the bigger picture.
So are you going to at all acknowledge that you just blew up over something that I was absolutely citing fairly?
I don't think you cited it fairly.
I think people should be prosecuted for engaging in plans to overthrow a government. That's kind of
that's a very loose definition of plans to overthrow the government.
Y'all don't seem to be that informed.
Wait, Luke.
But yeah, so basically they looked it up, and Luke Beasley basically calls him out, and he's like, are you going to acknowledge the fact that I just fairly cited that and you blew up over fucking nothing? And then Tim Pool's like, no, I'm not going to acknowledge that. It's like, it's wild to me. It's sort of like when Jamie pulls up something on Rogan, and it's like, hey, are you going to like acknowledge this? And they're like, no. So okay. I don't know what to do from here. He's not a dumb guy though. I don't want you to think like Tim Pool's like dumb. I think there's just this urge that he has. He's definitely not like committed to like being well read. So like for all of his other like critiques, Ben Shapiro is a well read individual, right? Sagar, Crystal, even I'd say even Emily, they're well read, right? But Tim Pool
Oh yeah.
is not at that level, and he's not a journalist; he's a commentator, you know. But he goes out of his way to have a unique interpretation, and that can sometimes get in the way of like facts. Like a lot of his stuff is like non sequitur. Like it doesn't like none of the stuff he says follows. Like
Yeah.
and again, I wish I could have more examples, but I'm sure I'll find clips of just random, Tim Pool, not even getting owned, but just like, okay, this doesn't work. Like what you're saying is not like logically consistent.
Yeah, I've only in terms of Tim Pool, I see clips of his quite often because he seems to stay within like low grade controversy basically like constantly. But I've only the only time I've listened to like a full thing of Tim Pool's is when he had a debate between Richard Spencer and
Andrew
I
Wilson.
yeah, Andrew Wilson and yeah, I mean he seems like he's probably a fairly nice guy. You probably can get along with him fairly well, but yeah, he didn't bring much to, and I think his role was a moderator in that, but he didn't really bring a lot to the discussion. So
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And listen, like I think Tim Pool, out of most of the people that we've mentioned today, like if it was just dudes that we were gonna have fun and kick it at a bar, like I think Tim might be one of the the more fun ones to do that with. I don't think that we'd have nearly the amount of like productive conversations we'd have. Because like he doesn't understand like really the structure of a lot of stuff that happens in politics. For example, like uh how like the appeals process works. I mean, he has the basic stuff down, like three branches, except all that, but he doesn't quite understand that like when the court says no, that means no, and like when the president signs a bill, like there's no really going back on that past that. He doesn't understand a lot of this stuff, which is it's totally fine. Or like the fact that like for example, like this new budget bill, so they're going to pass the budget, and then in like September, October ish area, they're going to have the appropriations where they're like, okay, we voted back in like June that the military is going to get 900 billion. Where do we want the 900 billion to go? He doesn't quite understand that there's like another process after it gets passed. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't quite. It's like no. There's no. Anyway, which a lot of people are like that, but like especially people who didn't grow up in politics. Like Tim Pool didn't. Like he was an activist and a reporter more than anything. So, well, if that was it for Tim, oh, go ahead.
Oh, that was it for Tim Pool. Is there another figure you'd like to opine on, or was that
Yeah,
all?
no, I could do this. I could do this all day. I just want to get your thoughts on a million people. Do you have any thoughts about Destiny?
Yeah, I'm not a fan. I will say I think he's I've listened to him on occasion, and he seems to hold a better conversation than a lot of commentators. So I certainly understand his appeal. I think he is entertaining, and there's definitely some talent there. I don't find him to be very intelligent. I the first time I was really exposed to him, he was on a no jumper podcast. He was supposed to debate Richard Spencer. They ended up just having a conversation, and Destiny struck me as someone who just didn't have a good general like base of knowledge. Maybe his IQ. I could say maybe if I'm being charitable, maybe his IQ is relatively high, but he doesn't seem to know basic facts like let me give you an example. In this Richard Spencer conversation he had, he didn't know that the Bible was not written in Arabic. Like he thought the Bible was written in Arabic, which, I mean, if you're a person who I guess has never interacted with like the Bible, or doesn't know like Middle Eastern history, I guess that's understandable. But you would also think that you know that's something that you would expect somebody to know, that the Bible was not written in Arabic, if they received like a basic education out of
Well,
like.
Well, so here's my thing on that. So, I mean, it's one thing for like you and I, if we're having a conversation. I don't know much about the Bible, and you're teaching me about the Bible, and I'm like, so what language was it written in? And it's like, oh, I know why you would think Arabic, but it's actually Latin, or originally Koine Greek, right? The New Testament, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And the language they spoke was Aramaic, and like we could go through all of that, right? But like it's another thing if I were to tell you, no, Darren, it actually was Arabic. What are you talking about? And that is where I think Destiny runs into trouble. Is the dude is convinced that he just he's kind of guessing sometimes, and it's like he's just really hoping that either A, he won't get caught, or B, that he's right. And like you said, like there's no, he grew up in a Catholic school system. I think I've heard him say he should probably know that, right?
Yeah, yeah. You would think that would have gotten absorbed, but
Or
maybe in fairness.
at least have the ability to say like, I don't really know what it was written in. I don't know. Like, why? I don't understand. If you don't know something, and this is my problem with him, is like, why would you say, oh yeah, it was written in Arabic? No, it wasn't. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen him kind of do that particular tactic. I saw him do a debate with Nick Fuentes, and he like pretty much through the entire debate. For one, you could tell he was chat GPTing like the whole time, or maybe not chat GPTing, but he was like
Googling.
his like chat was like feeding him stuff because he kept looking at his phone. So, he was rather Googling or AIing, or, relying on his chat or something.
Right.
And then like he would just assert things like he knew them when he obviously didn't. Yeah, I find that annoying. And then also like just as a person, like he's a total degenerate. I mean, back when he was married before they split up, he was in an open relationship, with his wife, and in fact, one of the guys she was sleeping with, she left him for. So, that's it's just so obvious that something like that would happen. And then, he he he's just such a degenerate. There was a sex video of him that was leaked,
Yeah,
where he was
yeah.
sucking another guy's penis. So, this is a great role model for, he has a son.
Right. Well, hey, let's not go too in on the on the personal stuff, just because I don't know how real. I mean, listen, I totally get that you don't like the personal stuff, especially
Yeah.
the socially degenerate behavior, but let's try not to go down like the right. I don't know. It just seems like too much punching down and not fair. Not that we could punch down to a guy that's got millions of subscribers, but let's not just go there. Let's stick to like he just says stupid shit. You know, you know what I
You're
mean?
right. You're
If
right.
that's
It's
okay
a
with you,
tad salacious. It's a tad
let's just keep it a
salacious.
little bit more classy. You know,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
we'll save
We'll
that for
opine on.
whenever he comes on in the future. You know,
Yeah. Oh yeah. When we're that big.
yeah. What do you think? Let's do this guy before we forget. What do you think of Nick Fuentes? Like, what do you think? What are your thoughts?
I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge fan. I think
Can't imagine why. Can't imagine why.
yeah, I think he's one of the greatest commentators of our time. I'll listen to his
Oh,
show and
relax. Let's not go
no,
too
I think
far.
so.
Calm down.
I think he'll provide a novel insight, and I typically I'll find myself changing my mind when I listen to him, or he'll point me in a direction I hadn't quite thought of before, and his analysis on foreign affairs is really good because oftentimes he'll touch on things that I hadn't read before, and I wouldn't have heard of had he not brought it up, and even like really niche issues about like characters within the online ride and how they might actually be subversives, like Bronze Age pervert, for example, or Curtis Yarvin. We would call that the Peter Thiel sphere. He's certainly. I think he's my favorite commentator. Honestly, right now. Uh, I love him. What about you though? What are your thoughts?
Well, so I've got really two key problems with Nick Fuentes, and as a general rule, I kind of like his commentary on a bunch of stuff, but he seems overly obsessed with well, you know who, and he. So it's one thing for me. So like my position is that like, listen, this country gets way too much money. We get very little in return. They they seem to have a much more like influential role in our policy than our other allies, and I don't like that. And I basically just want to nick them back down where our other allies are in terms of foreign policy, right? They don't get any. I don't want them to get special treatment. And Nick Fuentes basically acts like, well, they run the world, and I think that anyone who thinks that is suspect, right? Um, obviously for obvious reasons. And the other thing is that like he trolls a lot, and I hate trying to have conversations or debates or anything with somebody who's not genuine. So like in the few times I've seen him debate, there's moments where I can just tell the dude is trolling and he's just trying to have fun and make memes and go viral. But then like whenever you get him going, like I've seen him on like that Myron Gaines podcast with Destiny, when he's like genuinely debating people, like he knows his stuff, and he's. I just wish we got more of that. But there's also, the problem of he can't get platformed anywhere. So
Yeah, that is a problem. We'd probably see him on lot more programs, but I think everyone is so afraid of getting their YouTube demonetized or destroyed, where they're just not willing to have him on to showcase his debate skills. I kind of like the trolling. I think it's funny, but I guess to each their own. I can see why you might not want that. I remember the last debate I watched that he did was with this Dean Withers character, and
I did see that too.
like at first, like you could okay from the get go you can tell that Nick is far more intelligent and smarter than Dean, but from the start, Nick was trying to play along and debate him and debate him where he is and give points, but Dean Withers is a bit of a sophist, I would say. He was resorting to the like debate me bro tactics where he was getting all loud and talking really fast and doing like you know basically, I don't know if you could call them non sequiturs where things don't quite follow. I think Nick was getting exhausted with it after a while, and so he did resort to trolling. And so, yeah, so if you're not a fan of that, I can see why that would be a big critique. But on the other hand, I think I don't know, I think it's just kind of funny. So I like it.
Yeah, no, I get you. Well, my thing is I've never. You said he offers great analysis. I've really never heard him offer anything insightful on anything other than Middle Eastern foreign policy. If you get where I'm going with that, um, I'm trying to not make this entire podcast about that. Which tends to happen a lot when you and I get going. You bring it up a lot. You know what I mean?
What the hell is Israel?
It's just something Rick starts talking about when he's blackout drunk.
What? In what way? Like, what's my point?
In a way that has no point? You just babble about defense budgets in the United Nations and then you pass out.
So, to be clear, I sometimes reference the geopolitical complexities of the topic, which is not the same as going to an anti-Semitic place.
I have no stake in this.
I don't either. I'm just saying, if anything, the drunk version of me is probably so supportive of Israel. He wants what's best for it, and...
Hey, man, I'm not touching this. You do you.
Okay, well, like
It is your
Nick,
top issue. It is your top issue. I get that.
Oh yeah,
It's not mine.
And like I'm like Nick in that way. I think they are the relevant factor, and I'll kind of leave it at that.
Yeah.
Since we're on YouTube, I don't want to.
No,
I don't
get
want
you.
to blow up the channel. So
Yeah,
I'll
I
leave
appreciate that. I appreciate that.
I'll leave it at that. But
that's pretty much all I got on Nick. You got anyone else you're just dying to rant about?
well, I brought him up on a few instances.
Oh,
This
God,
is
here
my
we go.
second. This is my second favorite
I'm
commentator.
pouring a drink. I'm not ready for who this is.
Okay, I think you've seen some of this guy's content. Richard Spencer.
Yep. Fuck.
Well, he's really interesting. He's or at least he was back when it was a thing. He was like the de facto leader of the alt-right, but now he's like a Kamala and a Biden voter, and he offers like really and I every time he says, every time he opines on matters, I'll find what he says interesting. I might not agree, but like for example, he did not convince me to vote for Kamala Harris this past election, but I found his reasoning to be very intriguing, and I gave it a lot of thought. In fact, he helped push me towards not voting for either. It's similar to how Nick pushed me to that point, and I almost, I was on the edge of voting for Kamala. It wasn't implausible. I could have voted for Kamala, but I just wasn't quite there, so I voted for neither. But Richard is a big influence on me. I find his takes on the way he interprets like Hollywood films, I find to be very interesting. Something that I won't go too far into it because also like we're on YouTube, but he has like some really interesting commentary that you can't really hear anywhere else. And his interpretations of the Bible are incredibly interesting as well. It's stuff I've truly never heard before. So, I find him and his co-host Mark Brahman just to be really intriguing individuals.
Yeah, and he's more of a culture guy for me, or a philosophy guy. Like anytime I hear him or see him on Twitter, or I guess X, anytime I see him there, he's pretty much commenting on something culturally that happened, or very little like political analysis that I see. Maybe he's got some deep, long Substack podcast about the big beautiful bill or whatever, but I just never see it. I think he's mostly like interpreting literature, such as like the Bible, or he's writing a new book, right? That sort of thing. Different mythologies I've seen him talk about. And anytime I hear him talk about a political discussion, he tends to just revert back to like philosophy and culture. And I hate those people. I just can't stand it. I just now I do see why you could find him sometimes insightful, but it's just not my personal cup of tea. He's just not.
Yeah, it's certainly, yeah, I get it. It's certainly not for everyone. I think he's best consumed if you like subscribe to his Substack, and then like if you maybe at first I wouldn't even listen to his podcasts as much. I like where it's just him and like a bunch of people talking and discussing current events. I would listen to whenever they discuss like literature or film. They have these like really novel takes on like classic film, like Stanley Kubrick films, like Eyes Wide Shut, and or like the Bible, or they'll even all kinds of things. So I just think it's something so new and different. I'm just really impressed with them. Uh, but I really only have good things to say. Nothing really crazy to say about him. I guess the only other person I would want to discuss is Richard Hanania. What do you think of that guy?
Oh God, and I'll have to lean on you a lot here because I haven't seen like a ton of him, but he just seems like just I don't know, something about him just seems repulsive, and that's not fair because I've never really even engaged with much of the dude's content, other than like I've seen him I think on Breaking Points with Crystal at some point, and I think I saw him on Destiny Show where he's basically like he's a he's a repentant Trump voter. Is that not correct? I'm thinking of the right guy.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Currently he's been going on an apology tour.
Yeah,
So
yeah, and that's disgusting. Like I get it, like he's I mean, but here's the thing, man. Like, if there's anything at this point that you didn't see coming, like, you shouldn't have voted. You know what I mean? Like, and his Twitter account is all over my feed, and it's always disgusting slop. It's just random, like, sexual undertones. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just super weird, man.
well, that's what makes him funny. That's what makes him
But
funny.
he's not trying to be funny, I don't think. Like, do you think so? Or you think it's 100% intentional?
Oh, it's certainly It's
Well,
certainly
then that
intentional.
might actually be funny then. Then maybe I owe him an apology. But listen, I just like I've never in the two moments I saw him, I was like, not one time did I hear him say anything that I was like, oh, that's a good point. You know, like not. He was basically like, I didn't know this was gonna happen, so I shouldn't have voted for Trump, and it's like, disgusting. Like,
Yeah, it's interesting because like with other commentators we've talked about, he'll we kind of know their values, and so it's a little easier to predict what they're gonna do or not do. Like with Richard Spencer, who we just talked about, he's a huge Ukraine fan, so Kamala was the obvious choice for him. He wanted Ukraine to continue to receive lots of funding, and he wants to uh, close make our ties with NATO even tighter. So but Richard Hanania, he's all about the free market. He's like one of these ex-alt right libertarians. So he's the free market is what he's all about, and the Republicans in this case, he made the guess that there would be uh, less anti-free trade policies with Trump coming in, which is kind of funny, but yeah, he definitely picked wrong, I think. But
yeah, I think so too. One of the last ones I wanted to do, and then we can go wherever from here because I think we've already gone a little long, but it's totally okay with me 'cause I'm having a blast. Um, Jordan Peterson. We both have a mutual friend who is well, he's a Jordan Peterson purist, or at least he was for a long. And I think we've all known someone in our life that's that way, right?
Oh
They
yeah,
just were super.
definitely.
Me and my family went. And we actually saw him when he was here. We actually went to visit one of his lectures. I think it was the "We Who Wrestle with God," where we basically watched him stand on stage for 30 minutes and mumble to him fucking self, and then ultimately say nothing of substance, not a fucking thing, not a single time. And you want to talk about a sophist? That this guy and the this guy is exactly what we say when we say we hate academics. Like, this is exactly why. I mean, you just ask the dude a straightforward question, he refuses to answer, or he defines his way out of having to answer. It's all just super annoying, and I can't believe that there's a large segment of our population that finds this dude in any way insightful or. I mean, did you see that recent debate he was on with Jubilee?
Oh yeah, one of those liberal kids gave him a smackdown. You know.
Oh yeah, I'm playing both. Like the guy, basically calls him nothing. Ask him outright, "Are you a Christian?" He refuses to answer. The other dude says, like, "Would you lie to save your family?" He refuses to answer. It doesn't. Or like he made him he made him go down the entire process of, okay, fine, I would tell the least amount of lies possible to save my family. It's like, what are we doing here, dude? Like let me ask you, like, you're married, the audience may not know, but like, what would you lie to save your wife's life?
Oh yeah, of course.
You'd tell as many lies as you fucking thought you had to, man. Like, it wouldn't even be like, it's not even a discussion, right? And
Oh
I
yeah.
know I know people with kids or grandkids, right? And it's like, would you lie to save their life? And they're like, are you kidding? Just lie? That's it? Like, are you kidding me? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it doesn't. I don't know. He doesn't make any. So what are your thoughts? I'm kind of rambling here, but like,
Well,
what do you think?
no, you're fine. I think what all you said was good, and I agree that especially on that point where you said he was kind of a sophist. I remember, first realizing this. I think it was in college, actually. I was like, this guy is a charlatan. Like, he doesn't say anything of substance. And honestly, like, okay, again, like, I don't want to be punching down, so let me know if this crosses over into that territory, but he kind of almost strikes me as like slightly like mentally ill, perhaps. Have you noticed like he cries a lot?
God. Well, and I don't want to do this because it's not fair, so I'll probably edit this part out, to be honest with you. But he's a recovering pill addict, if you didn't know. Like, and I mean, a
Oh, I didn't.
severe. He went several stints overseas. I think it was in Russia. His daughter has opened up about this a lot, but he's
To clarify, like we've clarified so many times, Dad and I both were on psych meds for over 10 years, prescribed to treat major depressive disorder. Major depressive disorder is not a joke. It ruins your life.
But I wouldn't ever use that as a reason for why I didn't like him or his commentary. I think that's got nothing to do with his struggle with addiction. I don't think so.
Yeah, well, I don't know. It's just like the crying that he does. I find it like disturbing, and until now, until I've heard what you've just told me,
Well,
I
I don't think
found it.
that's got anything to do with that. I thought you were talking about anyway. Nothing. Never mind. There's some, I don't know what you'd call it, some esoteric commentary on some of this stuff. But the crying, I don't understand either, because it's like the dude's over here preaching about masculinity, and why aren't they gonna let men be men? And he's over here crying all the time.
Yeah, it's just really disturbing, and I've seen clips of it. It's like he'll be asked some like really innocuous question, like "How are you doing?" and then he seems to be on like the verge of tears. So yeah, I find him kind of enigmatic. I don't really know what his deal is, but there was a time when he was first coming onto the scene where I thought more highly of him, but yeah, I think maybe he should have just had his 15 minutes of fame and then he should have went away, because I think that would have been better for his legacy, honestly.
Well, I think the dude is riding. Gosh, and it's hard because I don't know the guy, but I've got this strong hunch that this dude is just riding the gravy cash train. Like this dude is just okay. Well, I gotta rake in as much of this while I can because I think he knows that the right wing grift is going to come to an end at some point. May as well just take it for all that it's worth. I'm sure the dude's made, his, millions and millions and millions, right? So,
Oh yeah, certainly. I mean, those talks that he does,
and he,
and then I think he signed a pretty big contract with the Daily Wire. I think they are paying him quite a bit. So
yeah, and they pay well as a company, so it wouldn't shock me one bit. But yeah, and his daughter has her podcast thing going on too. Like his family's gonna be well set up, But I just, in terms of politics, I've never heard him say anything really insightful outside of the free speech stuff. Which honestly, like I used to agree with a lot of I used to be a free speech absolutist. I would probably not categorize myself as that now. But it's not because of him. It's just I just don't buy the arguments anymore. But that was kind of his real start, right? Was free speech, and then it became like now I'm just gonna overly obsess about trans issues, and I'm just like, that's kind of gross. Like you can't, yeah.
it's like it's been played out too. It's almost one of those things. It's like, yeah, I'm not a fan of it, but I really don't even want to hear about it anymore.
Yeah, it's like, can't we just go back to pretending that this didn't exist? It's not a problem,
Yeah.
Like let's just ignore this, downplay this, do whatever. But and it's the same with like Matt Walsh. Did you ever see that Joe Rogan clip where it's like Matt Walsh thought that millions of children had been castrated? Like,
oh yeah.
Anyway, I guess that's not important. But
Well, yeah, it just goes to show how patently absurd I don't know. It was like the new satanic panic. It was like the trans panic.
No, for sure, and we may find it icky or gross, but like it would never be the forefront of our politics. You know what I mean? Like it would never.
Yeah, it's certainly not something that I could ever fathom talking about multiple episodes in a row, or
yeah. Why would you talk about that, Darren? Well, we could talk about Israel every single freaking time. It's
exactly. Now
God dang
that's
it.
something of substance.
God dang it, Darren. God dang it. That's funny.